Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are here to do the next WrestleMania and our WrestleMania look back, going through every single WrestleMania to look at each match, rate them, and then rate the overall. We are just getting started here, of course, with WrestleMania 5 leading up to WrestleMania 42. WrestleMania 5, of course, took place on Sunday, April 2nd, 1989, once again at the Trump Plaza in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Second year in a row, kind of the deal they had made with that. And this WrestleMania attendance was announced at 18,946, so just a tad less than the year before, but still a fraction of the 90K that was at WrestleMania 3. The tagline for this WrestleMania was "The Mega Powers Explode," very much referring to Macho Man Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan. But yeah, it's pretty decent WrestleMania in my eyes. But let's go ahead and get through each match and discuss them as they took place. Kicking off the very first match of WrestleMania 5 was a now face Hercules going up against King Haku with Bobby the Brain Heenan. KP, how'd you rate this first match? And comparatively speaking, I thought this was one of the better kickoff matches throughout the 5 Manias that we watched so far.
I think we have our first major disagreement, to be honest with you. I don't really think this got things going at all. I found it quite sluggish, slow. They didn't really have that much time between the two of them to generate a decent match in my eyes. And I think that, I don't know, I guess maybe depending on how the build was going into this one and, like, you know, maybe what followed on afterwards, this is the first time I'd ever realized that Haku was actually a king in his career. I didn't realize that. So when he made his entrance, I was like, oh, okay, cool. I didn't know that was a thing. So, you know, fair enough. I'll see what he's like, see how he is in a singles capacity, because I only know him, you know, alongside Tama as part of the Islanders. So I thought that, you know, that was the majority of what he did in his career. So when I thought, oh, okay, he's the king, must be something special, must be pretty good. And then, yeah, maybe this is the wrong match to watch in that sense, because I didn't really get too much from him. I thought that it was okay. He had a nice little start to the show. But then, like, as the match went on, I just felt like it just sort of, I don't know, it just like stagnated really quickly, and there was nothing really special or anything really interesting in the match to really sink my teeth into. The match in the end, Haku goes for a punch. Hercules literally just ducks underneath and hits him with a back suplex, and that is the match won after Hercules attempts some sort of like bridge style pin. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really think it did anything for me. I didn't really feel anything from it, and yeah, I just thought it was a little disappointing, really, from my first experience of King Haku. I gave it a 4.5 out of 10. I'm assuming you gave it a bit more than that, though, right?
Yeah, I did. I thought I thought they had a pretty good chemistry and a decent back and forth. Um, but yeah, comparatively speaking, I did think it was one of the better matches, and I liked the style that they had. So yeah, I gave this one a 5.5 out of 10. I thought it was decent enough. Yeah, nothing really bad about it for me. But yeah, regardless, decent opening match for me. Kicking off the next match, we have the Twin Towers Big Boss Man and Hakeem with Slick going up against the debut, or at least WrestleMania debut, of the Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. It's crazy to see this tag match, and of course, Shawn Michaels, as we know him today, aka Mr. WrestleMania. KP, what'd you think of Shawn Michaels' first WrestleMania and the rest of this match as well?
Not gonna lie, when the Rockers first came down, I was like, Shawn Michaels, let's go. Okay, this could be really good. It got to a point where in this match where I really enjoyed how it was going. The flow was brilliant. I think that the Rockers came out absolutely full of energy and full of life. Just wanted to really bring some high energy and high pace into the matchup, and to do that against, you know, a team like the Twin Towers, who obviously are two very big guys. To sort of like bring some fast pace to that is going to be kind of difficult, because obviously they need to keep up with that as well. But I think that just the pure speed and just like style of their wrestling it really sort of like meshed well with the Twin Towers, to be fair. And I really enjoyed the opening like few minutes. I thought it was really really captivating to watch. I liked how it sort of like changed towards like the mid section of the matchup, but then like towards the end, Twin Towers, picking things up a little bit more and getting in the ascendancy, picking up that victory in the end as well. You got Akeem, who throws Marty to ringside. Big Boss Man catches Michaels in the air with a beautiful spine buster. It's absolutely perfect. Slams it down onto the canvas. Boss Man then tags in Akeem, who hits a splash, and that would be enough to get the victory in the end. But really, really good tag team chemistry from both teams here in this matchup, especially the Rockers, working on the arm of Akeem for majority of the early stages. And yeah, just love the pace and energy from it. Really, it was a really good tag team match. I gave it a 6 out of 10. Just think that it was a nice little tag team match at the very early stages of WrestleMania to get things really started for me personally.
Yeah, in my head, I've been really looking forward to when we start seeing people that we know and have seen today. Um, this is kind of the first, I think, big instance of that, seeing obviously Bret Hart, but not around much anymore. But then Shawn Michaels, seeing him in his debut. And yeah, you could see why the Rockers are, they had some other names as well, but you could see why they were around and were such a big deal because they were pretty fun to watch. And Twin Towers weren't bad as well. Don't love that name for obvious reasons, but yeah, it was a good match. And if you thought the match was a bit sloppy, and I didn't, but the only part where they were both hitting Boss Man at the same time, and they were a little off. Apparently, the night before, they were both up till 4 a.m. drinking, so living up to the name of their tag team. But yeah, I thought outside of that one spot, I didn't see any other issues. So apparently, they were able to get away with it. But that was one of the interesting facts we found on WrestleMania 5. But yeah, this is a pretty good match as well. Very good tag team match. I give this one a 6.5 out of 10. Moving on to the next match, we have $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase with Virgil going up against Brutus the Barber Beefcake. KP, once again seeing Brutus and Ted DiBiase going from the main event last year of WrestleMania 4. What did you think of this one?
Yeah, quite the contrast in back-to-back WrestleMania matches for the $1 Million Man. Obviously being part of that big heavyweight championship, WWE Undisputed Championship tournament in the previous year, and now having a matchup with Brutus the Barber Beefcake, what seemed like a pretty personal back and forth here. I thought the match was pretty decent for the most part, to be fair. I quite enjoyed it. I liked how the two sort of like just went about their business for the majority. Brutus, he gets to a point where he's got a sleeper hold locked in. That's until Virgil gets up onto the apron, though. Obviously providing a distraction. Brutus goes after Virgil, and he actually follows him down to ringside, a little bit of cat and mouse type situation. That then provokes DiBiase to come on down and attack Brutus from behind. And then the two would just brawl until the referee counts the 10. So unfortunately, it did end via a double count out, which is a shame because I think up until that point it was a really good flowing matchup, and I think there was some high intensity here from both men. They clearly didn't like each other, and it was very ever present throughout the matchup itself. But yeah, just unfortunate about the way that it did end. I'm not the biggest fan of a double count out match, but sometimes these things happen, I guess. After the count out had been declared, post match get a little bit of a thing. The brawl continues with Brutus laying out Ted before he turns his attention then to Virgil. He locks a sleeper in on Virgil in the ring, and then that gets Ted DiBiase to get back into the ring as well to try and sort of like help him out. Ted gets slammed for his efforts though onto the mat, and then Brutus goes out to get his cutters, to give him maybe a little bit of a haircut. But DiBiase and Virgil do get out of the way and escape to safety. So yeah, there's a little bit of post-match stuff there. Obviously going into the gimmick of the Barber. But yeah, I enjoyed the match. I thought it was really good up until that count out, which I thought was just a really big shame. I thought it was just flowing really nicely, and would have been cool to have seen one of these two men get the win properly. But yeah, I gave it a 6 out of 10 regardless. I enjoyed it. It's just a little bit of a shame about that finish, that's all.
Yeah, definitely a finish that we are not typically prone to like, but we have seen a lot of those through these first 5 Manias. The only other complaint I had was I didn't get to see a proper haircut. it's hard to be the barber when you can't give out consistent haircuts, right? But yeah, I think Brood High, as mentioned by the commentary team, I think he's been a pretty consistent performer. I think this is no exception. Yeah, decent enough bout. Yeah, just gotta point out the ending. But yeah, he definitely had his hands full with DiBiase constantly taking timeouts, and then when he finally had control of them, then Virgil came into play. So definitely had his hands full, and just would have liked to have seen a clean finish. But yeah, I give this one a 6.5 out of 10. Yeah, this was another pretty decent match. So a very nice start to WrestleMania 5. Kicking off the next match, we have the Bushwackers going up against the now heel Rougeaus brothers with Jimmy Hart. So if you're heel, you must tag with either $1 Million Man or Bobby the Brain Heenan or Jimmy Hart. This one taking on Jimmy Hart. A very interesting team, the Bushwhackers. KP, what'd you think of this match?
So I'm very aware of the Bushwhackers, but I've never actually watched one of their matches before. I've seen like clips and like little bits here and there about them, but never actually sat down from bell to bell, experienced one of their matches. I don't think this one was probably the one to watch, to be honest with you. It was okay. It was a fine tag match. There was like nothing incredibly wrong with it, I suppose, and there wasn't like anything special about it. It was just somewhere in the middle, nice box standard tag match. But yeah, we got the Bushwhackers picking up the victory in the end. There's like a move that they do where they like it's like a sort of like ramming the headbutt type thing where one of them is running towards, but they've got their partner's head like just under their arm, and they like just bash the head into their opponents. They do that. They hit the charging headbutt tag move. That's whilst the referee's in the Rougeaus corner. And then there's a double gutbuster that they use then to basically pick up the victory. And yeah, that would be the end of the match here. But before that, it was a pretty okay match, to be fair. Decent enough tag team stuff going on here between both teams. I don't think it was anything close to what the previous tag match was. Obviously, Twin Towers and the Rockers. But yeah, it was a fine match. There was nothing like glaringly bad, but like I said, nothing incredibly special either. I gave it a 5 out of 10. Just an okay tag match, really. Nothing else too much to say there, to be honest.
Yeah, and we see a few dynamics between the previous WrestleManias where they were face last year, they were heel this year. Obviously, this being one of them with the Rougeau brothers. And yeah, familiar with the Bushwhackers, but hadn't seen a match with theirs. Curious to see if we do see more of them. They were super over with the crowd. So for whatever that's worth, and yeah, that battering ramp ended up getting the Bushwhackers the win, and Jimmy Hart kind of costing the Rougeau brothers. So proving that those managers don't always help, but sometimes can hurt. We've seen that a few times with Jimmy Hart, specifically that megaphone, and a little more on that later. But yeah, I thought I basically summed it up perfectly. Not as good as the last tag match we got, but not terrible either. So I gave this one a 5.5 out of 10. Just not something that I can, take from that I remember very much. So with that, we'll move on to the next one, and we get a WrestleMania debut of Mr. Perfect going up against the Blue Blazer, aka Owen Hart. KP, what'd you think of this one?
So this match allowed me to bring out that little bit of the wrestling purist within me. I loved it. I thought it was a great matchup between both men. This is actually my match of the night, just as a little FYI going forward for the rest of the matches. I really liked this one. I thought that the back and forth was great between both men. Technical brilliance on display. Proper graps for for a large part of it. And yeah, I think the two complement each other really, really well. This is my first ever time watching a Blue Blazer match. I'm obviously aware of him as a different name and like a different gimmick and persona, whatever. But yeah, in terms of actually the Blue Blazer, this is my first experience of him. I've heard of him before, but never seen a proper match of his. So this was, this was a cool way to really get into the early stages of what the Blue Blazer was, I suppose. But yeah, really good matchup between both men. Blazer attempts a crucifix pin, which gets really close to getting a 3 count, but Mr. Perfect does kick out of it in the end. And then he takes Blazer out before hitting the perfect plex to get the victory. So yeah, very nice back and forth. Technical brilliance on display was fantastic. And yeah, just a really nice, well-flowing contest between both men. Like, I think if they had like another like few minutes, it probably would have been like really special. And like maybe like pop in a couple of other big spots. But yeah, I gave it a 7 out of 10 because it was just brilliant. It was a really nice, well paced, nicely flowing, matchup between two technically gifted wrestlers. So yeah, great for me.
Yeah, seeing the two individuals, I kind of similar to you was like, oh, okay, let's go. Knowing the two guys, and I kind of mentioned earlier when we start to get into this era where we are more familiar with people and have a knowledge of their career, it's exciting. So that's only going to increase obviously as we get closer to modern day. But yeah, as you mentioned, this was a technical bout, and we are fans of said matches. So this, both of us being a fan of this is obviously no surprise. The announce team here making note of his singlet. This was the debut of Mr. Perfect's obviously iconic singlet. And for Owen Hart to be able to get over a gimmick like the Blue Blazer, I think it's just a testament to how good he actually is. But yeah, this was a technical bout and a very good one. And like you, the only really issue I had with it was I thought this could have benefited for being a bit longer, which obviously is a theme throughout these WrestleManias we've gone through so far. But yeah, I thought this was a really good match. Looking forward to seeing both of them down the road. I give this one a 7 out of 10 as well. So yeah, decent match. And up until now, we've had a pretty solid WrestleMania. No really bad matches. Which prior Manias all had some pretty big stinkers here and there. But so far, not any of those. But we'll see if we can get through the night without one. But let's go ahead and move on to the next match, which was one of my favorites of the night. This was Demolition defending their tag team titles up against the Powers of Pain, which kind of feel like a knockoff of their own team. Of course, they have their Demolition's previous manager in Mr. Fuji. This one for the World Tag Team Champions, and basically a handicap match because Mr. Fuji was not only ringside but also in gear, ready to wrestle. Gaby, what'd you think of this one?
Yeah, not a bad tag team match at all here. Demolition obviously winning the tag team titles last year, still having the titles a year down the line. Very, very obviously impressive run between the two men. And yeah, Mr. Fuji being on the other side this year was obviously an interesting dynamic in this one. But yeah, with how the match went down here, I thought it was pretty fun, to be honest. Four guys who have got just I guess endless amounts of power between the lot of them. There was a lot of meat in that ring. I think nowadays this would be a big meaty man smacking meat type matchup, and I think that'll be referenced on commentary for a large part. But yeah, it was a good match. I enjoyed it. I think going about how the match sort of like went down in the end. It gets to a point where Fuji goes to his trunks on and he gets like his salt out, and that's obviously a thing with Mr. Fuji, throwing salt in an opponent's eyes. But he would attempt to throw it in the face of Smash, but Smash actually gets quite lucky, ducks underneath, and it results in the Warlord getting hit in the face by the salts instead. So Demolition pick up Mr. Fuji then and hit an elbow drop backbreaker, and that allows them to pick up the victory and to retain the WWF Tag Team Championships. It was a good match. Yeah, there's a lot of power on display. It wasn't particularly slow either. Like you'd expect like four big guys to put on like a really slow, sluggish contest maybe, but it didn't really seem that way. It flowed really nicely, and yeah, there was a nice balance between power and sort of not boring people to death, which was great. And yeah, I liked it. I gave it a 6 out of 10. I thought it was a pretty solid contest, and yeah, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's a good point. They're not huge men, but a pretty good size. And definitely in today's standards, you think it kind of like style wise, like Viking Raiders, like very much style wise, kind of have their tempo of a match. Not that typical big men pace. But yeah, I like this one as well, and I thought Mr. Fuji wasn't bad either. I'm curious as to why Demolition accepted the handicap match, maybe just to get their hands on their former manager. But yeah, just having watched WrestleMania 4, knowing their reign lasted, 400 days, knew that they weren't going to lose. But still, I don't think that took away from the match. I thought this was a decent contest. And the announcer said Mr. Fuji used to be a very dangerous man. So I'd be lying if I said I'm not a little curious to see if I can find some matches of his. Yeah, it just has me a little interested. But regardless, I thought this was a pretty good match. And yet again, another good tag match, another good match for WrestleMania 5. I give this one a 7 out of 10. So moving on to our next match, we have, in my opinion, one basically the first kind of stinker match. We have Dino Bravo with Frenchie Martin going up against rugged Ronnie Garvin. KP, what'd you think of this one?
Um, yeah, this. I mean, I described the match earlier as just being okay and like just sort of like being like a pretty bog standard tag team match. Nothing special, nothing great. This was kind of that, but like in the singles capacity, I suppose. Yeah, Dino and Ronnie. My first real experience of Ronnie, to be honest, I don't think I knew who he was going into this matchup, going into the show. So interesting, to actually see the man for for the first time. And I didn't really get too much from him, to be honest. The match was okay. It was a little slow. I guess they took a little while getting into it. Maybe perhaps that's what you could say. But yeah, there was just a very okay singles matchup here, to be honest with you. Ronnie, let me start that again. Sorry. Ronnie's on the ropes in the corner. This is all towards the end of the match now. Laying punches into Dino. Dino does drop him down via an atomic drop in the end, though. Ronnie, he's staggering all over the place. Dino hits a side slam to get the victory then. And as Dino's celebrating his victory, Ronnie attacks him from behind, sending him out of the ring before then attacking manager Frenchie Martin, who's celebrating with him at the time. That was the only real piece of information I sort of took from this. Nothing really else to speak of, except for it was A, kind of slow, and B, just a pretty, I don't know, uneventful match. It was just a bit dull. Nothing really took place, which is a bit odd. I gave it a 4.5 out of 10. Didn't do anything for me, and I don't know. It was just very, very meh. What about you though? What did you think?
I think dull and meh are perfectly adequate ways to describe this match. Dino getting around 75% of the offense. Ronnie Garvin got a little bit of comeback there, but not really. And then the end, Ronnie not happy with the results and attacks. So I just couldn't really care much less about this one, and definitely not one of those matches I think I'll be coming back to watch. I guess it's one of a 4 out of 10. But let's quickly get back to the good matches of the night. The next match, we have the Brain Busters, Arn and Tully, with Bobby the Brain Heenan going up against Strike Force, which once again is Rick Martel and Tito Santana. A quick bit from the commentary team. They noted how long it's been since Strike Force had tag. So clearly have not been together since last Mania. But KP, what'd you think of this one? I think this is the WrestleMania debut of Arn and Tully. And then once again, seeing Mr. Consistent, Tito Santana with Rick Martel.
Yeah, a match is going to be pretty decent when you got Mr. Consistent in the in the ring. I love that's what we call him, to be honest. Tito, he's got that kind of thing. You see a match with him, it's going to be at least decent at best. Well, no, as a minimum sort of thing. So, how this one went down, I thought it was quite nice. There was a good little flow to it. Good tag team chemistry between both teams. Hitting their tag team moves between the two of them, and then it gets to a point where we get a little bit of a story progression type thing. And the commentary team sort of referring to how they haven't really been teaming together much, the Strike Force, and it's been sort of like a bringing back the team together, I suppose, type thing. Don't know how long they've been together up until this matchup. Obviously, getting a WrestleMania match, you're gonna have to at least be doing something, of note up until this point, I would assume. So, not knowing the build is very difficult. But with saying that, I think both teams were great to begin with. But because that story thing was playing out and they hadn't been tagging together very often, they sort of played a nice little turn here because after Santana accidentally forearms Martel when Tully moves out of the way, Tully crashes to Martel crashes to ringside. The time eventually comes around for Tito to tag in Martel, and he just walks away. He heads to the back, leaves Tito to fight a handicap match. Essentially, then it's 2-on-1, and essentially, ending Strike Force as a tag team, and was very vocal afterwards about his displeasure of Tito Santana and how he just isn't living up to the bill, and he's just he's not good enough. Basically, is what he was saying afterwards. But yeah, the Brainbusters, I thought they looked pretty good, to be fair, as well. Obviously, a lot of the conversations here about Strike Force, but Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, I think they had a great contest between the two of them. taking on Strike Force in this one. And yeah, they had some nice chemistry as well, like I said earlier. But there was an assisted power driver that would get the victory in the end for the Brainbusters. And yeah, just a really solid tag team matchup here. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. Thought it was a really good matchup.
Yeah, and having been a pretty big fan of Ric Flair, I've heard tons of stories about Arn and Tully, of course. So seeing them here, getting their Mania debut was of course nice to see. And Strike Force was a decent tag team, but I guess no longer. Rick Martel having washing his hands of the situation, and apparently this was he had troubles getting into the country, so almost missed this match entirely. But luckily he didn't, because apparently this was a very much needed rejuvenation of his character, and helped him quite a bit going forward. So interesting to see that, and we'll see where he goes from here. Yeah, but for the tag match itself, yeah, very good match. And until Rick Martel decided he was done with it, obviously the writing was on the wall then. But yeah, the Brain Rush is getting the win here, and another very good match. So I give this one a 7 out of 10. The next match has Jake the Snake Roberts going up against Andre the Giant, with Bobby the Brain Heenan once again. The guest referee for this match being Big John Studd. KP, again, a couple of more guys that we've seen quite a bit through the first 5 Manias. What'd you think of this iteration?
Not good. Not good at all. I think this was a really big dip in quality throughout the night. Jake the Snake and Andre, you could expect a certain match between these two men, both very big statures in the size. You expect something decent at least. You got John Studd in there as special guest referee, adds a little bit of a dynamic to it as well. I mean, it did add a dynamic, but it was just a very strange one, to say the least. The match ends in the end because Andre the Giant gets himself disqualified because he attacks the special guest referee John Studd from behind. Like, Jake is attempting to bring Damien the Snake into the ring, which Studd then attempts to stop. That provokes Andre into attacking him. Like, I don't understand it. Ted DiBiase does come on down and steal Damien from Jake, and then that results in Roberts chasing Ted back up the ramp. Brings Damien back, and then as this is happening, Andre and John Studd are just going at it in the ring. I'm assuming there's build to this. I'm assuming they don't like each other, and there's some ill feelings between the two of them. Because for me, watching it seems just come out of absolute nowhere. But yeah, because they're going at it in the ring, then Jake's going off to get his snake and bringing it back. He slides Damien into the ring in the end, and then Andre just hightails out of there, and that's basically the end of the situation. But up until the DQ, it was a typical Andre match. It was kind of slow, progressive. Both men trying to knock each other down, and Jake the Snake especially trying to wear down the Giant. And he did in parts, to be fair. Andre will obviously, capitalize on his strength and power and stature by knocking Jake down and utilizing his strength. But yeah, I don't know. It was just it's not a me match. I think that's been the case a few times now when it comes to the big guys, the really big guys. The lack of technical display does come, it does come into play here. And yeah, it's just not one that I do enjoy very much at all. So yeah, didn't rate it at all. I gave it a 2.5 out of 10. That mixed with the confusion with the disqualification, which seemingly came out of nowhere. Maybe you can shed some more light on that one, perhaps. But yeah, I don't know. Just not for me.
So, in what I believe will go down as the biggest discrepancy we've had so far, going through WrestleMania 1 through WrestleMania 5. Yeah, I typically would agree with the fact that this isn't my, standard match. Obviously, we mentioned we like the quicker, not necessarily quicker, but the more technical matches. And when you have Andre the Giant, as famous and as he is, he definitely, at least that I've seen through the first 5 Manias, he doesn't bring a match quality with him. More so of just, look at this big guy wrestling. As more so from everything I've seen, I've never seen a really great match from him. But that being said, throughout the first 5 Manias, I think this is probably my favorite Andre match. Something about the dynamic, obviously Big John Studd, they have their history back from WrestleMania 1. That $15,000 slam match that, of course, Andre won. But yeah, they definitely had a history with the special guest referee. And I'm not sure what reignited that whole thing. But having him here felt like another dynamic. And, Jake is a very solid performer himself. So for whatever reason, these hit all the right notes for me, and I thought this was entertaining. Definitely not a 5-star classic by any means, but yeah, and then had enough, and he's just very quick tempered. And I think this was his last. I think this is Andre the Giant's last singles match at WrestleMania. So maybe that played a part into it as well. Feeling a bit nostalgic, if you will, I guess. Um, I don't know, but for some reason I like this one a little more, and I give this one a 5.5 out of 10. Definitely not the best match of the night, but yeah, I enjoyed it, and we don't have a discrepancy like that very often, so it's just interesting to note. Going up against the next match, we have the Hart Foundation's Jim and Brett going up against Honky Tonk Man and Greg the Hammer Valentine. KP, seeing the Hart Foundation and once again, and then a couple of other guys here in Honky Tonk, and again, another very consistent performer throughout the WrestleManias we've seen, and that of Greg the Hammer Valentine. What'd you think? With also Jimmy Hart, can't forget him. What'd you think of this one?
Yeah, you definitely can't forget Jimmy Hart in a match like this, and a bit more on that later on. The sorry, this next tag team match at WrestleMania, but a few of these are on the show. We do a lot. We do love our tag team matches, and obviously we've said before, in especially the early stages, tag team matches normally meant good quality contests, and up until this point tonight, I think that was sort of like fitting the bill for the majority. And this one didn't really slip those standards either, to be honest. I thought it was a good tag team match between both teams. Like you said, Greg the Hammer Valentine, he's always pretty consistent and stuff, doing his job in the ring and stuff. Maybe kind of like a Tito Santana in there as well, type character. But yeah, Jimmy Hart gets to a point. He leaves his megaphone on the apron. Honky Tonk is looking to go and grab it. That's the intention of him leaving it there. And instead, Jim Neidhart, sees what's going on. He chases Jimmy Hart away from the situation. And then he quickly just does a 180, turns back, runs around, and then goes and grabs the megaphone for himself. So obviously Honky Tonk, he's gone over towards the megaphone, so he's like right by the ropes at this point. And with the referee dealing with Greg Valentine, Jim Neidhart just smashes the megaphone over the face of Honky Tonk. And that allows the victory for the Hart Foundation to get right afterwards. So it was a nice tag team match up until that point as well. Very back and forth. Both teams, sort of like being able to really showcase what they can do in a tag team capacity. And there was a little bit of technical display on show, which obviously I'm a fan of. But it wasn't like anything truly special, but it was a good, solid tag team match, which was fine for just getting the job done here between these four men. I gave it a 6 out of 10. I like the finish. For once, Jimmy Hart tries to get involved in it. If it backfires massively, he's pretty successful as a manager from what I've seen. So far in these 5 WrestleManias. So this is maybe his first like real bad slip up. Just didn't really see Jim Neidhart, paying attention to him properly. But yeah, I liked it. Good finish and a solid tag team match as well.
Yeah, considering the talent we had, I would be lying if I said I wasn't expecting a bit more. But yeah, you can't really fault it. A good enough match for what it was. You just when you start including people that you've seen, before, and you set a standard for them, and sometimes they just don't quite live up to it. But yeah, the match itself was good enough. I gave this one a 6 out of 10. And as you kind of mentioned, Jimmy Hart kind of costing him. He didn't directly cost them, the Rougeau brothers, earlier, but he didn't help them either. So maybe Jimmy Hart is finding his limit as a manager. I guess we'll have to see going forward in future WrestleManias. But decent enough. Not a bad match, just not something super incredibly memorable outside of the finish. So give this one a 6 out of 10. We have our next title match. We have Ravishing Rick Rude with once again Bobby the Brain Heenan going up against the Ultimate Warrior for the Intercontinental Championship. KP, what'd you think of this one? I think this is Ultimate Warrior's WrestleMania debut. What'd you think?
I mean, as Intercontinental Championships go at WrestleMania, I think this was not a bad matchup. It wasn't a particularly great one, but it was fine. Somewhere in the middle again, like a couple of these matches have been throughout the night. Just a couple of things. Like I think just the flow of the matchup in the early stages, it was a little progressive. it wasn't like a fast-paced thing. I got the impression that you know that both men were sort of just, I don't know, just buying time a little bit, just sort of like filling for what was going to happen later on. I don't know if that was really the case here, but that was like where my mind went with it in the early stages. I don't know if you agree with that one as such, but yeah, it just felt, I don't know, like a little bit like their minds were elsewhere and they were just going through the motions, and it was nice and just easy for them. It was yeah, it wasn't anything crazy. It does get to a point where Rick Rude's on the apron, and I like this part. To be fair, this is kind of cool. Rick Rude's on the apron. Ultimate Warrior readies a suplex. He's in the ring at the time, so he's going to suplex him over the ropes and obviously into the ring. But as he does go for it, Bobby Heenan's on the outside. He's there for a lot of these matches tonight, and obviously this is next one. And yeah, he would grab the feet of Ultimate Warrior. That would allow Rude to transfer his weight up onto Warrior, after that suplex, sort of like transferring onto a crossbody type thing, maybe. And yeah, shifting his weight down, that allows him to go for a cover, and he would win the Intercontinental Championship afterwards. And I've never seen a man flee so fast from a match than Rick Rude after winning this one, by the way. You didn't even see him run up the ramp. He was gone. By the time Ultimate Warrior could react, and he was obviously livid with the situation. Obviously what Heenan did, turns around, where's Rick Rude? Oh, he's gone. He's like straight up there. So I found that quite amusing. But yeah, the match itself, I don't know. Up until that point, it did feel like we were just going through the motions, and it wasn't really anything truly great or noteworthy. I gave it a 5.5 out of 10. It's not necessarily a one of the worst matches of the night, but I think it could have been a lot better than it was, and I just felt like it was a bit average, if that makes sense. What did you make of it? Like as critical as that, or maybe a little bit different?
Yeah, I'd call it a little above average, but yeah, I thought, I thought the finish was good. Bobby the Brain Heenan obviously paying off there, grabbing the Warrior's leg, allowing Rick to get the win and become your new Intercontinental Champion. Um, but yeah, over the years, I've heard a lot of hate about Ultimate Warrior, and I hadn't ever seen anything personally. I haven't watched a ton of it, but I've seen his entrance, of course, his entrances being iconic and all that. Um, but I think this was the first match, at least in a long while, that I can recall I've seen of his. And there were some mishaps there, a bit sloppy, honestly. So I kind of get where it comes from a little bit. It was a fun match. It just wasn't super clean. And I think, unfortunately, Ravishing Rick Rude has had a few bad matches at WrestleMania. So curious to see if that, increases his stock or maybe decreases it. I guess we'll find out over the next few manias. But yeah, especially after the match when Ultimate Warrior goes to attack Bobby the Brain Heenan, he picks him up for his gorilla press and drops him. A little more on that later, but yeah, it just feels like that's kind of his thing from what I've seen. A couple of spots in this match, he didn't quite land what he was supposed to either. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. This was Ultimate Warrior's first loss in WWE, and genuinely kind of one of the first two, actually. Another instance of this later on in the night. But Warrior looked pretty displeased that he lost that match, so maybe he didn't quite agree with the decision. So interesting enough. But yeah, new Intercontinental Champion and Ravishing Rick Rude. I'm curious to see if he does anything with it. I like his character, but unfortunately, a couple bad stinkers at Mania. And I wouldn't even call this one a stinker. 5.5 out of 10. Not terrible, just not something super memorable either. So moving on to the next match, we have Bad News Brown going up against Hacksaw Jim Duggan. KP, Hacksaw Jim is a very interesting character, and I'm sure you were chanting once again with him this time. What'd you think of this one?
Oh, of course, you got to do it, right? I'd never known somebody stick to one thing so much. It's crazy. But alas, the match itself, yikes, straight up, just pure yikes in this one as well. Everything about it was just, oh, what are they doing here? It was slow, it was sluggish, it was quick in a sense that it didn't last very long, and there's not a lot of good things you can really say about this. The two men hate each other. They showed that, so you could see the character, relationship between the two of them. So I guess that was kind of good. But yeah, besides that, I don't really know what else to say about it in terms of a good capacity. It gets to a point in the end where the match goes down as a double disqualification after Bad News Brown grabs a steel chair. Jim goes for his 2x4. They have a little bit of a stare down between the two of them. The referee's just watching, like, don't do this. Don't do this. What do? They just hit their weapons together. They go to strike each other with the weapons, and obviously they collide and clash together. And that's the double DQ right there and then. So, yeah. If it was really this personal, why didn't they just make this like a no disqualification matchup and just have them beat the ever-living days out of each other for a few minutes, and then they could have had a win, with somebody just getting something from it? But yeah, I'm guessing this sort of like progressed things onto something onto something further after this, I guess, maybe on like another event. But yeah, it seemed to just be a little bit of a throwaway type thing, and just get two people involved, keep something going, and just go from there. But yeah, I don't know. I got nothing really else from that, and it was just a bit of a weird one. Yeah, I gave it a 3 out of 10. I didn't really know what to make of it, to be honest. What did you make of it?
Yeah, like I said, not every match can be good. You have to have your stinkers, and this was one of the few for me. I don't care about really either guy. The match itself was super forgettable. And then of course, the finish. We've seen a couple of those already. And as great point brought up by you. Why not just make it a no DQ and let them go at it? Yeah, I didn't walk away with anything here that I thought was memorable, and yeah, just kind of a forgetful match. So I gave this one a 2.5 out of 10. Not the worst match of the night, but let's go ahead and get into that one, which is the next match, which has the Red Rooster going up against Bobby the Brain Heenan, who is now in action. So as if Bobby hadn't worked hard enough as a manager tonight, now he gets to work an actual match. Bobby was obviously at a pretty big disadvantage, not being a wrestler at this point. And obviously, we saw him get worked over by Ultimate Warrior earlier. And as I was just mentioning a bit ago, the attack by Ultimate Warrior on Bobby getting dropped. Bobby was dropped accidentally, very awkwardly. And that added another person to the list of people that didn't care for Ultimate Warrior. Ultimate Warrior had a lot of backstage heat from what I've been seeing, and I'd kind of known of that, but seeing people actually talk about it in the reviews of this. But yeah, Bobby was dropped awkwardly, and that Bobby had his neck issues. Of course, we talked about his flying to California a couple years back, and he was in Tampa with neck issues. This, of course, made that worse and made those worse. And I think it kind of attributes to the match quality here. KP, anything nice to say on this one?
I mean, what can you really say about it? The real challenge here was actually getting pictures to sort of like fill the slide. It was literally I don't know how long it actually took, but it felt like about a minute and a half, if that. The main takeaway from this one is that the Red Rooster, he's in the corner. There's like a bit of an Irish whip type thing. They changed places a couple of times, this, that, and the other. Ends up with Rooster in the corner, like I said. Heenan goes in for a shoulder tackle type spear type maneuver, just trying to get his shoulder in there. And Rooster gets out of the way, which just hurls Heenan into the ring post. That exposes him into that. Rooster goes for a cover, and that's the victory. It's literally all the match was. Like, that's essentially everything that happened in this match. So yeah, there really isn't much to go with. There was a little bit of post-match thing with the brawler. He would get into the ring and attack Rooster. That would send him to ringside. That would allow Rooster then to get back into the ring, and he would send the brawler scurrying off. So a little bit of back and forth there, I guess, between those two men, which probably could have been the actual match that took place, maybe. But yeah, as to why Heenan was involved here, I'm not entirely certain why he was in the matchup. But yeah, I bet he wasn't too happy about what happened with Ultimate Warrior literally, moments ago. So yeah, not ideal in that sense. But I gave it a 1.5 out of 10. It was by far the worst match of the night. Was it really a match? It was literally like a minute and a half, 2 minutes most. So yeah, you could argue maybe it was just a little quick segment more than anything really. But yeah, Red Rooster wins, I guess. Well done, I suppose.
Yeah, and you have to wonder, with with Bobby being dropped on his very injured neck already, you have to wonder if that played a part in the match. If the match was originally set to be longer, obviously, we may never know. But regardless, yeah, 2 out of 10 for me. I had two stinkers in a row. You don't see that a ton with WrestleMania. At least we haven't. But yeah, I think this fits the bill. And maybe this was just to, there's always usually a shorter match before the main event. So maybe these matches just make the main event look that much better, I guess. But with that, let's go ahead and move on. Macho Man Savage, of course, defending his WWE Championship and the main event of WrestleMania 5, which was billed as the Mega Powers Exploding. That was the tagline of WrestleMania as a whole, and obviously this match as well. Miss Elizabeth playing very much neutral for this match, saying that she supports both men, which is strange. But yeah, we can only keep Hulk out of that main event for so long, right? But WrestleMania 5, he's back in the picture with Randy Savage, and yeah, I thought this was a pretty decent main event. One of the better main events that we've seen through 5. KP, what'd you think of this main event?
Yeah, as far as main events go at WrestleMania, I think this was a pretty good one so far from what we've seen out of the first 5. There are definitely a couple that I can think of that were considerably worse than this one. But yeah, when it comes to how the match played out, very interesting dynamic with that of Miss Elizabeth. Quite unique in the sense that like you said, she was supporting both men. Remaining sort of like on the fence in this one about where she stood. And yeah, she was both a a helping hand and a distraction to both men, I suppose you could say. Just checking on both Macho Man Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan respectively throughout the contest, making sure they're okay, good to get back up to their feet and to carry on with the matchup. And yeah, maybe being a bit more of a distraction to that of Savage rather than Hogan. There's a couple of occasions where Savage is getting up into her face, giving her like a bit of a point, and yeah, just like moving her around a little bit, just to sort of like get her out of the way type thing for from his opinion. But yeah, in terms of how it went down, I thought both men linked together very well. Loads of history going into this one, obviously with the Mega Powers imploding, exploding, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, just obviously just came down to this WrestleMania match, which is a very big, very very big moment for both men, being the WWF Heavyweight Championship contest at the very end of the night. In terms of how it went down, Macho Man controlled so much of it. In the middle stages of the match, especially here, really, it was all Savage, and then he hits his Macho Man elbow drop. Naturally, if he hits that, you think it's probably going to be the end of the contest. But Hulk Hogan kicks out, and then you've got the classic Hulk Hogan, hulking up, that big kick out, and the look of shock on his face, realization that he's feeling it, he's pumping up. And yeah, then he obviously go through his motions, get that little comeback sequence in, and then he'd hit the leg drop to win the WWF Heavyweight Championship. So it was a decent main event match for sure, between two guys with so much history, and yeah, it played out as a very big fight feel at the end of a pretty big night overall, to be honest with you. But yeah, decent between both men. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. Not a bad main event at all.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, like I said, it was one of the better main events, and I will say that kind of my main takeaway here was obviously they worked well together. It was a memorable match, but it did feel like to me that Hulk kind of made Savage look bad here. Of course, kicking out of the elbow drop pretty emphatically nonetheless, and then immediately coming back and getting the win. And then of course Miss Elizabeth kind of going to the back. That kind of, I think that was supposed to be kind of Savage's breaking point, and feels like he wasn't healing it up enough, and still was being cheered. I don't know. The dynamic here I think was a bit weird. I think the fans like both quite a bit, and I think that was obviously one of the selling points of the match itself. But yeah, I felt like Savage was probably the right pick to win here, and it just feels like everything with this match was very much we kind of been there, done that. Um, even the crowd itself afterwards, when Hogan's doing his usual, winning the title and getting his celebration, 5 minutes of celebration or whatnot, which he'd been involved in, and 4 out of 5 actually wrestled in and had been involved in all 5. It just felt like the crowd weren't as invested as they had been. So maybe even the crowd, much like myself at this point, feels like, okay, we're ready to move on to someone new for a bit. And that's kind of was my main kind of feeling for this one. So, and after losing, Savage looked legitimately pissed. And again, I don't know if that was, his character selling because Miss Elizabeth wasn't out there, or if he just didn't like the result either. So, unfortunately for me, I think that result ends up being the main takeaway for me, and kind of overpowering the match, itself. But yeah, a good enough match. I gave this one a 7 out of 10. Obviously, was good. Just walk away with really not liking that finish. But yeah, that main event there. As far as WrestleMania as a whole, KP, what was your overall and kind of final closing thoughts on WrestleMania 5? Crazy, we've already gotten 5 in the books. What were your overall rating for this one?
So hear me out. What I will say is throughout the majority of the night, I thought the match quality had definitely been brought up a notch. I think that as a consistency throughout the good and decent matches, I think they were a little better than what we've seen in the first 4 WrestleManias prior to this one. However, because of the few stinkers and the very very poor segments that we had alongside that, it sort of maybe just I guess overshadowed my overall a little bit of this one because I think it could have been a little higher my overall rating, but there were some really shocking results on here. So I got like a 1.5, a 3, a 2.5, a 4.5. So what there are, another 4.5 as well. So there are some really low ones on here, and I yeah, that has brought it down a little bit. And it did bring it down to a 5, but I think for the general, just sort of like speaking about how the WrestleMania went on, like I said, I thought most of the matches did show an upping in quality, which is quite nice. It was good to see, and yeah, I think just some matches being given a little bit more time. Obviously, some suffered as well, in the timestamps. But I genuinely think that in terms of the WrestleManias that I've watched so far, even though this isn't the highest rating that I've given so far, being 0.5 off of a couple of the other ones prior, I do think this is probably the most enjoyable one that I've watched for just the consistency of those decent to good matches. So yeah, whatever way you want to translate that, it makes sense in my head. Maybe it maybe it makes sense for those listening as well. I don't know, and obviously especially with you, Nick, too. But yeah, what about you? Where's your head at? Did you think similar things to me here? And yeah, what did you give it overall?
Yeah, this one's a weird one. Obviously, it has those lows and it definitely has some highs, and I think that's very standard for WrestleMania. Outside of the main event, I didn't feel like this Mania brought anything super special to the table. I think it's definitely probably the most consistent. Lots of good matches, but really, really not bring anything super special. So I think that's the kind of the biggest downfall for this one. Even the main event, which like I said, I just didn't agree with the ending, and nothing really super, yeah, basically that's having me wanting to go back and watch this one. So I felt like this one just kind of there. It was consistent, but lacked that big special moment outside of the main event, which I don't think quite delivered as much as they thought it would. So, but of course, we get the debuts of the likes of the Rockers, Blue Blazer, Owen Hart, and of course, Mr. Perfect. But yeah, like previously mentioned, I think the main event just kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. And overall, just I think I probably won't go back to this one. But in terms of rating, it was the second highest rating for me. So yeah, I just sometimes that main event just doesn't set right with you, and this is one of those. But overall, I think it was pretty consistent in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, with that, that's WrestleMania 5 all done here. And, quickly moving on, we'll be to WrestleMania 6, of course, very soon. And with all of that, this has been the latest WrestleMania episode of our WrestleMania recap, going through all 41 WrestleManias up until WrestleMania 42. But if you like what we're putting out here, please let us know in the comments below. And of course, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button as well. And until next time, this has been The Push with Nick and KP. We'll see you soon. Take care.